Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining tonight this YRP webinar. I'm Laura Namuskai. I work for Network Rail in asset management, and I'm part of the Young Rail Professionals Yorkshire and North East Committee. We are a volunteering organization who aims to inspire, promote and develop the young professionals in the rail industry. Tonight we got our second webinar on networking, and Abi Broadley, who's the founder and managing director at Abi Broadley Limited, and Lucy Prior, MBE, business growth director at Tech Systems, and are going to tell us more about it. So without further introduction, Abi, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Lorena. Hello, everybody. As Lorena just said, I'm Abi Broadley, and when I was asked if I would like to speak at this, if I would be able to share my knowledge of networking, which I've learned over the last few years, I thought, well, really, it just needs to be a simple guide to networking. And I know networking is something that me and Lucy Prior are really passionate about. We both find it quite fun most of the time, so I'm sure we'll be able to share lots of tips for you. So I've been working in rail for about 11 years. You might know me from running an SME that's in the road rail plant world. I left there last year, so I've set up as a consultant in November. So networking is really key to me to grow my business. And before I worked in rail, I worked in TV and film and theatre, and I also worked in retail and hospitality, and I worked in Christmas decorations for shopping centres, or Christmas decoration schemes. So lots of different industries where you need to be able to connect with people, and it's important to build that rapport. So why I believe networking is really important is, like I've just said, rapport, communication, building that connection to people. We are social beings, so connection makes us feel good, and the railway family is brilliant, and it's great to be part of that. So networking is one way to do that. Developing leadership skills. I'm quite passionate about leadership skills and empowering people, and that again, that comes back to rapport and how you connect with people, and that comes back to networking. Improving your career prospects. So if you want to know people in different teams, or you want to know people in different businesses, again, networking is key. Also selling and business development, so that's probably one of the main things that I use networking for. You meet some interesting people and you can build your confidence, so it can actually be fun in the end. Once you start networking, you may find you really enjoy it, and it'll just become a habit that you do wherever you are. So like I say, I decided that I'd frame this as a simple thing to do, because I don't like complex things. So using the word simple, I view S as self, I as intention, M as making meaningful connections, P as pace and pause, L as listen, and also remember to laugh and smile, which is one of those things when you're really nervous, it's quite hard to do sometimes. And E is for evaluate and follow up. So that's simple. I thought I'd also do a little bit of interaction. So Dom, would you mind doing the first poll, please? And this is about how you feel about networking. So hopefully I will be able to see, once the poll is done, whether you love it, whether you're okay with it, but not sure what you're doing, which is where Lorena is when she talked to me. I hope you don't mind me sharing this, Lorena, that the idea for this Networking 101 was the fact that you'd been to a networking event with your peers, and you looked across the room and suddenly realised that through university and through school and college, nobody had ever said this is how you network. And lastly, you absolutely hate it and it's the worst thing in the world. So if you could all vote on that, that would be great, please.
Thank you all for voting. And these are the results.
Okay. So pretty much 53% of you are okay with it, but not quite sure what you're doing. So that's why me and Lucy are here. to help you, and 29% of you, so almost a third of you, love it, which is fantastic. That's great. And 12% of you absolutely hate it. So so they absolutely hate it. Unfortunately, I was hoping this would be an in-person event and I would be asking you why you absolutely hate it. But if it's about nerves, this first point might help you. So I don't know if you want to get rid of the poll or whether I need to just do that. Thank you. And I hope the ones that said they absolutely love it are sharing what they love about it with your YRP colleagues. Right, so my first point, S, is for self. So of course that's be yourself, but before I go on to that, this is something I have in my mind when I'm networking, that everybody is thinking about themselves. So once you have that in your head, that everybody else is thinking about themselves, they're just as nervous as you are, apprehensive, a bit worried about how they might speak to someone, they might not find anybody to speak to. Once you realise that, that makes it a little bit easier, because you might be worried about you, but everybody else is worried about themselves. And if you're worried about how to connect to people, I'll explain how, when you look at a room, how you do that. So if you're faced with a room full of 100 people, 200 people, whatever it is, then you need to do a few things. You need to look at the body language in that room. So are there groups of people that are tightly knit together? So they're formed in a circle, maybe it's 2, 3, 4 people, and there's no room for you to actually make your way into that circle of people. So just ignore them for now. You can't approach that group. If you find a group of 3 people, say, and they're sort of one's here, and one in the middle, and it's quite open, they're open to conversation, so you can go approach that group. If you're getting your tea or coffee or water, avoid the wine if you can, especially if you're new to networking, because that can be a disaster. You can actually catch someone's eye across the room and smile at them and then go approach them. If there's someone on their own, then by all means go and approach them. I have a few rules about in my head, obviously, and this is something I always used to say about exhibitions as well. If you're on an exhibition stand or if you're networking, if you're on your mobile phone and you're busy doing whatever you're doing, or you're speaking on your mobile phone, you're not open to engagement in the room. So put your mobile phone away and just make sure your company knows that you're not available to speak to for that hour and a half, whatever it is. And I said I'd talk about be yourself. It's really important that you're authentic to who you are. Now, if you're really loud, I've got a couple of caveats about this. If you're really, really loud, you're going to need to turn it down a little bit. And Lucy's laughing because I've told her a couple of stories where someone's approached me, they've recognised me from another time, and they've really excitedly come up to speak to me, and they were so excited and quite loud that all I wanted to do was, the back of my brain was going fear or flight, so I just wanted to run away. So I can't remember what that person said, who they were, what they did, or anything. And I've probably done that to other people. So if you're really loud and bubbly, you're going to need to tone it down a little bit. If you're really quiet and shy, like I am, although maybe people won't believe that now, but I used to be extremely shy, then you need to turn your volume up, speak really clearly, stand up tall, have your feet firmly planted on the ground and really ground yourself so you feel more confident, because you are going to have to act confident even if you're not. There's a couple of breathing techniques you can do. One being, if you breathe in 1, 2, 3 and breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you do that 3 times in a row, that actually calms you down and will make you feel better. There's a little trick in your brain that happens. The other thing you can do, if you get your fingers, and you can do this when you just, people won't notice you doing this. You can, I can show you, if you just put your finger on your thumbs, there's a pressure point there, and you can just hold your hands like that. Just put them down by your sides and do that, and that'll calm you down as well. So if you are really nervous and shy, those 2 things really help. So I is for intention. So why are you there? Why are you networking? I just lost my screen. Obviously hit something on my computer. Right, so why are you there? Why are you actually networking? So Dom, if we could have the second and final poll, please, that would be great. So obviously, is it to meet peers? Is it to meet people to advance your career? Is it to find out information, sell your business or product, or something else? Because YRP as an organisation, I know you're quite diverse. Imagining lots of you are working for Network Rail and the like. So you might not necessarily be selling, but it'd be interesting to know why you're there. Okay, so you're there to advance your career, most of you, and to find out information. Yeah, because some of these networking events are connected to speaking, aren't they? Speaking events, or it might be a whole day event with networking sections in between. And a small amount of you are there to sell your products, and obviously reconnecting with people. So that's great. So in terms of advancing your career, you might be looking to speak to managers, CEOs, managing directors, that kind of thing. And that's when you go speak to those people, or you might want to go speak to the speakers that you've heard, you can sometimes end up in a queue situation. And I always approach that as just being very British. It's just one of those slightly awkward moments, but you just have to wait your turn and speak to that person. And lots of people that are CEOs, chairmen, managing directors, etc., they understand that, and they're quite used to people waiting to speak to them. So just go with the flow on that one. So I is for intention, like I said, as part of simple. So what will make you more successful is the Stephen Covey, start with the end in mind. And if you know why you're there, then firmly have that in mind. If you can see the delegate list beforehand, then you Dom, could you do me a favour? Could you just remove the poll, please? That's all I can see. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, if you know why you're there, you're going to be more successful because you've got that goal in mind. So you might have 3 people you really want to see. You might be really ambitious and have 20. I wouldn't recommend that because that's just too many. But have a few people in mind that you want to see. Research them on LinkedIn, maybe connect to them on LinkedIn beforehand, and just point out you're going to be at this event. It will be nice to talk to them. Then you can use those body language techniques that I mentioned before, and you can go approach those people. And if you've got an idea of what they look like, that's going to massively help you. And use your colleagues and people you already know to introduce you to people. So M is for meaningful connections, so making meaningful connections. So remember your intention, why you're here and who you want to meet, and go and seek those people and ask questions to engage and listen. You need to make the meaningful connections. People want to do this because we are social beings, as I've already mentioned. You need to ask lots and lots of questions and listen. Now, listen's got its whole section on itself, so we'll talk about that a little bit later, because it's one of the most fundamentally important things you can do when you network. Really listen and pay attention to people. If you find that when you are talking to someone, in those early moments of talking to them, and networking can be really fast and intense, so you only have a few seconds to make an impression. When you're talking to them, you might find that they are an astronaut and you've got no reason to speak to them, and they've got no reason to speak to you. Obviously, I'm being a bit ridiculous, but there might be someone who's just not right for you. So you need to politely exit that conversation and move on. And you might be able to give back to them because they might be looking for someone in the room that you've already met, so you can point them out to them. When you are making meaningful connections, what are you going to talk about? Well, let's say what you're not going to talk about, which is the weather, religion and politics. Now, this is my view. If you get into a conversation about religion, that could be a bit dangerous and you're not going to build your rapport that you need to build. So ask them details about what they do, why they're there. That's an easy question. You know, why are they there? Who are they hoping to meet? Let them talk. And once you understand who they're hoping to meet, that's how you can help them. And I really do think it's important. And I think Lucy's going to talk about this, about giving back. So that's all I'm going to say about that, because that's what Lucy will probably talk about. So what other good questions are there? You know, what do you think to the speakers? Where are you based? You know, you can talk about, just ask them lots of things. What do they think about the event? Get them talking about the opinion. The next one is P. So this is pace and pause. Now, networking events can be really, really intense things. They can also be a bit dull sometimes if you can't find anybody that you actually naturally connect to. But generally speaking, they're really, really intense. You'll see a lot of people very rapidly. It's quite a noisy environment usually. And if you're doing it online, like we did InfoTalk last week, that's quite a tricky one to do, because you get dropped onto a table, you suddenly face with people you don't know, and you have to sort of build that rapport really quickly with them and interact with them. So you need to pace yourself. So if you need to take yourself out of that situation, go get yourself another drink. And drinks can be quite a good prop to have in your hand if you're kind of fidgety. So if you are really nervous, then having a drink, a glass of water ideally, or a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, go steady on the wine, then that's gonna help you. If you're in a real environment and you need to just sort of digest the last 10 people you've seen or whatever it might be, then go take yourself out of the environment and go make a few notes, because I find invariably the information you've just taken on board gets muddled. So I need to take my notes on the business cards that I've collected really quickly, or I write myself notes on my phone, but obviously I get out the room before I do that. And if you're on a virtual event, stick yourself on a table and keep moving, just to keep yourself quiet for a moment to take your notes. So we're now at L and we've got E to go. So listen. So this is, L is for listen. It's the most important thing you'll ever do in anything. It's a really good skill for leadership, never mind networking. You know, it's a really, really good skill. Stephen Covey, it's one of my favorite books, is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he says, seek to understand before being understood. Really, really key. And you will find, if you ask people interesting questions and allow them to speak, remember that you've got one mouth and 2 ears. If you allow them to speak more than you do, then they will feel really good about themselves, because I said at the beginning, everybody thinks about themselves. Everybody's favorite subject, even for the most introvert, is themselves. So that makes people feel really good. When you've had a meeting with someone and you've allowed them to speak, they will feel really good about you and they'll feel really good about themselves. And it makes you more confident, because you're not having to speak. You're not risking making a fool of yourself. So, and all the other negative things that go through your brain when you're speaking. Ask questions and give the space so they can respond and really listen. And then one of the techniques you can use is repeating some of what they've said, not word for word, but just so you show that you've understood what they've said. Smile, and because I did say it's for listen and laugh, so remember to smile as well. And this is one of the things I forget to do, because I can look quite serious most of the time. But if you smile, then that's really good, because that just is a connection and it makes people feel warm towards you. And then once they've had a fair chance at speaking, in the conversation, it's your turn. So it's a good idea to have an idea of what you're going to say beforehand, a little bit like an elevator pitch. So it's really succinct, really clear about what you do and why you're there and what you're looking for on that day. So finally, we made it to the end of simple, and it's evaluate and follow up. So you've got to be kind to yourself, but once you're on your way home after the networking event, or the networking event is over on the virtual platform, just take a few minutes and just think, okay, what went really well? And just maybe note them down so that you know that next time I'm going to repeat those things. And then being kind to yourself, so don't be too critical, but just think, well, what could have gone better? Because if you do that, then you can again note them down and you can correct that next time. And then all the time, and I'm quite a big believer in this, you should keep pushing yourself. So if you are shy, but most of you in the poll said you were pretty confident at networking, just keep pushing yourselves. You can have a lot of fun with it, and you can just keep experimenting with how you talk to people, how many people you approach at one time, all those kind of things. You can also sort of practice this anywhere and everywhere. And I drive my kids mad because they feel really embarrassed that I do this anywhere and everywhere. So if I'm out shopping, I will start a conversation with somebody in the shop, just because it's really good to just push yourself that little bit more and find out something interesting about that person. So that's what I've, in a nutshell, had to say about networking. That's my advice from the years of learning how to do it and how to get it wrong and make a fool of myself, etc. So simple is self, intention, making meaningful connections, pace and pause, listen and also laugh, and evaluate and follow up. And what I mean by follow up is, especially if you're in sales or if you're developing your career, is just to connect with that person, connect with them on LinkedIn, send them an email, and just make sure you're reaffirming that you've met and help them remember you. So practice whenever you can, and good luck, everybody. So I'm going to hand back to Lorena.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners found at least something new they haven't heard about. Lucy, would you like to take over? I think you might be on mute.
Oh, dear me. Failed at the first post. Sorry, everybody. I was saying hello and good evening, everybody, and thank you for registering to attend tonight. So I'm going to do a little bit about myself first, like Abi did. So I'm Lucy Prior. I'm Business Growth Director at Tech Systems. So we're an SME, a small company based in Doncaster, and we supply products into the infrastructure side of the industry. But I've worked across rolling stock, maintenance, and in trade associations as well. And I've got a few extra curricular hats as well outside the day job. I am really, really chuffed, Lorena, that you invited myself and Abi to take part in tonight, because as Abi said, I absolutely love networking. I absolutely love people and talking to people and learning about, what else is out there. So to kind of set the scene there, same as Abi did, set a scene a little bit where I've worked in the past. So like Abi, I've not always been in rail. So we're still relative minnows compared to some people. I've only been in rail for about 16 or 17 years. Before that, I've worked in recruitment, I've worked in hospitality. I avoided growing up for quite a while. I had 3 gap years. So I lived out of a rucksack for quite a while, and I just had a lot of fun. And over the years, I've realised how important it is to develop rapport with people. When I first graduated, my dad, bless him, said, "It's not what they know, love, it's who they knows." And I didn't believe him, and I didn't like it, and I was going to prove him wrong and make my own way. But actually, having that network of people who trust you and people who you trust is invaluable for your career and for the company or the purpose that you're representing. What I want to cover in my little chat today is actually to draw on some of the comments that Nina and Maria made last week, and some of the ones that Abi made just now as well, because there are so many similarities in what all 4 of us say and feel about networking. So I think it's really important that we underpin those and we pick those out. But I'm going to use some props today as well. I'm quite lo-fi, but the first point I really, really want to get across to everyone is that we're all connected in some way or another. Now, over the years, Abi was a client of mine. When I worked at a trade association, she was one of the first members that I signed up. But actually, over the years, we have become friends as well as industry colleagues. We're true friends. And that's one of the points Maria made last week as well. You make friends from networking, you absolutely do. But to go back to that point of connection, this is a really random prop, but it's a book I would recommend to everybody. It's not a hefty intellectual tome such as Covey and Highly Effective People. This is a book called Coasting. And it's about a lady who is from Leicester, and she just decided one year to jack it in and run around the coast of Britain. Now, what does that have to do with all of us here today? Why is this random bird from Doncaster telling you to read this book and make a connection? Well, actually, inside this book, there are 2 random links that I want to draw to your attention, and it's to prove the fact that we're so closely connected to one another, and we just need to be able to tease out those connections, because that in itself helps you drive conversation and help you feel a deeper connection to the people that you're networking with. So I'm going to jump to the back. If you ever do get the book Coasting, second book review down, there is a review from a gentleman called Danny Bent, who happens to be one of my neighbours. Unfortunately, I've just texted him. He was going to join the call tonight, but he's just back late from skiing. That's the sort of guy that Danny is. He runs around the Peak District, he goes skiing, he's a brand ambassador for all these outdoor things, and he reviewed this book. Now, that's a straightforward connection. He's my neighbour and he's reviewed this book. However, he was also one of the motivational speakers at Rail Wellbeing Live just before Christmas. So just from that, you know, I was scrolling through Rail Wellbeing Live looking at which seminars I wanted to attend. Like, my mate Danny is one of the speakers. He didn't necessarily know that I work in rail. I didn't necessarily know that Southern Region had booked him, and all of a sudden there's this random connection that's there. And like I say, it's a bit of a flippant illustration, but it's proof positive that there is some way of interlating us all to one another, which makes for interesting human conversations. I could go on with another description, but it gets even more random. It takes you around Patagonia. So if anybody does want to know about that, drop me a line on Twitter and I will explain. But it's that interconnection and that connection that you get with people. It's so important. And picking up on what Abi said and what the lady said last week, what is absolutely imperative is that you are authentic, that you are yourself. And that manifests itself in so many ways. So, number one, never ever go into a conversation that's above your head. I've worked in sales and business development roles, commercial roles, all my time within rail, and in fact out of rail as well. And there have been no end of times I've been in a railway depot or trackside and someone's asked me a technical question about my product, or when I'm at a conference, a very deep and technical question about what it is that I'm promoting or supporting with. If I don't know, I tell them I'll get back to them and seek the support from a colleague. And what that does is that builds up trust, because you know you're not going to try and pull the wool over their eyes. They know that you're being yourself. They know that you know your comfort zone and what you can talk about and where you would bring others in. But this being yourself, being authentic, can manifest itself in even much more basic things. So, for example, in the clothes that you wear. So I remember really, really early days, I was going on behalf of my boss. He couldn't make it. He sent me down to an awards ceremony in London. And back in the olden days, when I literally was the only woman in the room, I was probably the only one under 40, and I was certainly the only female under 40 in the room not wearing waiting on attire. So it was just this sea of business suits, and this is going to show my age. There was no LinkedIn to play with, not to that extent. There was no email delegate list. There was literally a printout of names on the walls. And I only knew one person on that list of a few hundred people. And it was a gentleman that was about to retire. So I couldn't find him because also he was up for an award. So the one person I knew in that room, I couldn't speak to. And I was terrified, absolutely terrified. So I had a couple of really uncomfortable conversations now. Drop me in a room, any conference, rail, transport, construction, chances are I'll know someone in the room. Chances are I'll have pre-connected with somebody in the room because I've either seen who's promoting themselves that they're going, or I've got a delegate list. But because I have now got this confidence in dressing as who I am, I don't like wearing makeup. So again, in the olden days, I went to this event where I was scared. I wore the suits I thought I should wear, I wore the heels I thought I should wear, put the makeup on that I thought I should be wearing, and I felt so uncomfortable in myself. I felt so uncomfortable in the event because I knew no one, and I felt out of my depth in terms of the conversations I was expected to have because I was sitting there in my boss's place. It's terrifying. Flip it around now. I wear what I'm comfortable wearing. I mean, I don't turn up in my scruffy old gig trainers. I do always wear decent shoes and nice smart clothes, but I wear clothes that I'm comfortable in. And that comfort comes through when you're talking. You're not forever faffing around with an uncomfy outfit or whatever it may be. So being yourself can manifest itself in so many ways. how you carry yourself, what you're wearing, what you're able to talk about, and the people that you're able to approach. On that, Abi's absolutely nailed it. Look for the people that are smiling. Don't look for the closed groups that are probably so deep in conversation or perhaps just nervous themselves and just clump in with the people that they know. But that is one of the biggest mistakes of networking. Abi mentioned InfoTalk, which was an online event that took place last week. It was fantastic. If you get the chance to attend, please do. Don't make the mistake of doing the easy thing and just chatting to your mates, because actually that's not going to tick off any of those boxes on Abi's poll. If you just chat to your mates, you're not necessarily going to meet anybody new. You're certainly not going to sell any new products. If you've got good proactive friends, then they are going to introduce you to other people. But if you're all guilty of clumping together, you're just closing that network and you're not networking, you're not reaching out to a wider audience. If Mike Noakes from Bays is on the call, he's going to kill me for saying reaching out as well. You should connect with people, don't reach out to people. Anyway, so yeah, be yourself. Look for the cues, look for people's body language. As you both heard, Abi and I both worked in hospitality, and actually I say this to anybody, anyone that's worked in bars, restaurants, cafes, burger vans, any sort of consumer, public facing, business to consumer role, it equips you with so many transferable skills because you can just read people. You know who's going to be super friendly, you can tell also who's going to be really mardy as well. So pick up on those cues. Again, it gives you the confidence in who you approach and how you approach them. But all of that, it all stems back to the why. Why are you networking? My why I'm networking nowadays is very, very different to back in those early days. I was new to the industry. I didn't even know what this concept of a personal brand was. Now, I hate this terminology, personal brand, but it is all about that, how you present and portray yourself and the circles you mix in, the conversations that you have and the information that you're willing to take on and the information that you're willing to share. So have a really, really grounded idea as to why it is that you're networking at that event. And actually that why then helps you really, really finely tune which events you go to. During the first lockdown, through the first wave, there were so many events, and honestly, literally, I lived on Zoom and Teams and Google Hangout and GoToWebinar such as this, and I was back-to-back online meetings every single day, usually with a couple of small children in the background as well, homeschooling. It wasn't fun. But I was going to everything, and they weren't all relevant to the purpose that I was trying to achieve. That can be very much, they can apply that very much the same to physical and real life events as well. And a lot of events now are carrying hefty and hefty price tags. So whether it's for your own career development or whether it's for the purpose of the company that employs you, think really carefully about what and why you need to network and therefore where you network. These events can be brilliant online or in real life, but if you're not going to get the return on investment, which can just be your time is an investment for you and for your employer, think carefully about where you're going, why you're going there, and work the virtual room or the real room accordingly. So on that note, then how do you prepare for events? In real life events are very, very different to online networking. So let's go for the in real life first. I mentioned, for example, I have a bit of a scooter around now on the internet. Look who's promoting the fact that they're going to such and such an event. I do it an awful lot. Abi does it. Anybody I respect, know, they're up there on a pedestal already in industry, they tend to let you know where they're going to be, because they know by telling people, then people can look them up in advance. Or, oh, well, I'm not going, but so and so is. Connect them on LinkedIn or Twitter beforehand. It's just a really good way and a really low effort, no cost way of preparing yourself anyway for walking into that room, but also lining up in advance a couple of conversations because you've announced that you're going to be there. Also, make sure if you're able to get hold of a delegate list. I mentioned that scary event for me in London where they didn't do delegate lists in those days. Nowadays, most major events do. They will send you a list out in advance. If not, they've got a big seat plan as you're walking, kind of like the wedding table plan. There is usually a huge seating plan. Look who it is that you want to connect with. If you've not already checked it out online, check it out on that board as soon as you get there and just set yourself a realistic number of targets, whether it's I want to speak to 5 people from that company, or I want to speak to those 5 companies, or actually I just want to get an audience with a keynote speaker. If you're going to something massive like the IMEC luncheon that's coming up, because a lot of YRP people do attend that, there is no way you're going to work that entire floor in one sitting. It just physically cannot be done. So being kind to yourself, like Abi says, is also being realistic with yourself. What can you actually achieve? So again, identify why you're there, who can help you achieve or deliver that why, and therefore seek them out or seek out their colleagues in those events. But above all, lumping all of this together, so being yourself, preparing, understanding why you're being there. And this is another thing that all 4 of us have said over this event and last week's event. To be interesting, just have and hold a conversation with someone, you have to be interested. Absolutely ask questions. Ask who they are, what they do, but don't just focus on their careers. Now, if you have been proactive and you've had a chance to look them up on LinkedIn in advance, don't start online stalking them, but actually scroll through, because LinkedIn gives you a lot of information on a person, where they've worked in the past. You never know. You might have worked in the same place together, or LinkedIn gives you a really handy list of who you have in common already. So, somebody that you know really well, that you're really comfortable with, might be a mutual contact. Oh, how do you know so-and-so, for example? These are all really nice little icebreakers that help us connect with one another as humans, not as potential sales or future employers or whatever it is that it may be. Interests are on there, groups that they're in, and the same can be said on Twitter as well. Have a little bit of a look at somebody's Twitter profile if you have a mind to, or if you've not had the chance to look somebody up in advance, but you're having a really good conversation with them, use COVID as an excuse to not swap the old-fashioned business card and say, do you mind if I just drop your connect request now on LinkedIn? And then you've got their permission, you're in front of them, so you've kind of pre-shamed them into accepting your connect request as well, which is a little bit shifty of me, but actually it really works. And it just means they're on screen, you've got information on that person that you're talking to, but please remember that we're all people. So I know which sports teams some of my contacts follow, or what sport they do themselves, or what music they're into. Music is a brilliant connector, and I've got a whole host of professional contacts who happen to talk a lot about music on Twitter as well. These little insights into what makes people tick, or what makes you tick as well. Last week, Nina said be very specific with which platforms you use as well, and I utterly agree with that. Facebook, I use that to Big Brother what's happening in my local area. I don't do very much on Facebook, but I know all the cool stuff that's happening in Sheffield. Instagram, that's my own little online scrapbook, and that's private and closed, and I only let people into that if I think I'm not going to bore them rigid, actually, with pictures of my dog up a hill, for example. But LinkedIn and Twitter, that's where you will find me. That's where I get RSI in my thumbs. Any event I'm at, I'm kind of live texting what it is that the speakers are saying, or I'm posting on LinkedIn about things I'm interested in, things I believe in. Going back to that personal brand as well, things that you're passionate about will help spark and reinforce conversations you're going to have with people. So personally, I'm very, very interested in environmentalism. It's been something that has sat with me right from school all the way through to now. And now that decarb and net zero and sustainability goals are part of everyone's conversation, that again is a really, really good way of finding a common ground with people, because it's actually something we all have to work towards as well. So maybe if there's a way that you can help one another. So in real life, it's very, very different to online. The two can merge quite well. If you're specifically networking online, so you're not in a big room with 50 people, 100 people, a couple of thousand people, you're in your screen. Again, never ever, if you can avoid it, just send somebody a connect request on LinkedIn without the message to personalize the invite. I tend to do my connections when I'm seeking new connections on LinkedIn. I tend to do that from my PC rather than from my phone, just because it's easier to type a better constructed message to the person on your keyboard than it is on your phone. But a handy little tip, if you don't already know it, If you go to connect with somebody when you're using LinkedIn in the app on your phone, don't just hit the connect button, hit the 3 little dots to the right. There's a drop down menu, and again, it gives you that opportunity to personalize your invitation to connect with someone and let them know why you want to connect. I've seen that you're interested in decarb, or I wonder if you'd help me with, or somebody recommended that I speak to you. Giving people that reason it creates more likelihood that they're going to accept and going to engage in conversation with you. And that's really important. Otherwise, you end up being one of these annoying so-and-so that just connects. They've got thousands of people within their digital network, but they've not actually engaged with any of them. They've not developed a rapport. They've not put across their personal brand. All these things do interlace with one another. So it's really important, going right back to the beginning, that you are yourself all the way through, and this feeds through everything that you do. Give you a couple of props as well. So talking about online, I've talked about LinkedIn a lot, I've mentioned Twitter. Anybody that's listening, if you do play online, you've been listening to Abi Broadley at Abi Broadley, please do give her a follow. I am Reedy with my first name at Lucy Prior, please do drop us a line, connect with the pair of us. The most important thing, and I absolutely mean this, the most important thing for me is that we pay it forward. Hashtag pay it forward. Going back to the why network with people? We've all got our own selfish reasons, inherent reasons. So ostensibly, my job title, Business Growth Director. So I want Croftech to have a wider marketplace, have a wider client base, be known by more people, have a better brand awareness. That's my very obvious why I network, but that's selfish. I would say that about 80% of the networking I do, be it online or in real life, is actually when I meet a new person or when I've got a newer member of staff with me, introducing them onto somebody else. You've got no benefit in that introduction yourself. I am so often hooking up new people on LinkedIn to speak to one another, same as on Twitter. And the reason for that is we can't be selfish with our time or our knowledge or our energy, and we've got to share it. We talk about hashtag Railway Family. I love the hashtag. If you don't already follow me on Twitter, please do when you'll get bored of me, but you'll see a lot of things that I share. But it is absolutely imperative that we remember that we are humans and we have social connections, and we're here to support one another. To go back to my point of illustrations in the book, so Lorena contacted Abi and I off the back of speaking to a gentleman called Oliver, who is now the young next generation chairman of CILT, I believe it is. He's come across Abi and myself in previous roles within his Network Rail job, and he recognised that actually we've got something to share. So I'm not necessarily benefiting on behalf of my employer or on behalf of any of the other roles that I hold in the industry, but I am benefiting because hopefully, even if it's just one of the 22 people that are on this call right now, if one of you takes something away that's useful, if one of you pays it forward and gives somebody a helpful connection, then we all benefit. Our industry, we are being challenged to deliver so much more effectively and so much more cost efficiently, whilst being greener, whilst having a better social value impact. So the more we can help one another, the more we can drive our industry forward. And that sounds so evangelical, but I absolutely mean it. So on that note, I think I'm going to hand back to you, Lorena, for questions.
Thank you very much. And also apologies to the listeners. I forgot to mention earlier, if you have any questions, please send them in. We do have a few coming in, so please do feel free to send them in even now. First question is for Abi. How did you approach networking immediately after starting your own consultancy? Did anything change?
That's a really good question. I think I've been really lucky to grow my network in rail and other industries as well. So those were the first people I reached out to, one of them being Lucy as well. And then back in November, I went really early on in November, I went to an event, and actually in that room, I hardly knew anybody. It was a rail room. So we just had to start networking again. So it just goes back to the same principles of you know, start conversations with people, look at people's body language, and like Lucy's saying, paying it forward's really important. It's a really lovely thing to do. It does make you feel good, so there is a benefit to you, but it just helps connect. yeah, it just helps connect everybody, and I think it's yeah, I just had to get back on with it and just you know, start networking again. So yeah, so I've met some really interesting people and some new people in my network, so it's good. Thank you.
Do we need to become better at online networking? As in, do you believe networking has changed long term with the COVID pandemic?
Is that for Abi or me or both of us?
Both.
One of the things. Oh, sorry, Luce. One of the things that I've noticed is it's made us, I don't know if you found this, Lucy, when you're doing networking now, I think because we've got more used to being on these platforms, things are faster. I think they're a lot faster than they used to be. And I think the pandemic's really shown us that the only resource that's non-renewable is our time. So actually that makes people, they can be a little bit rude sometimes, but really quickly, if you're not the right person to speak to and they're on a mission to find a load of customers, they will just very quickly exit your conversation. And that's the thing that I've noticed. I don't know if you've noticed that, Lucy.
Yeah, like with the info talk, for example, last week.
Yeah.
It's still a very hard thing to do, to walk away from a conversation. Goodness me, I caught up with someone that I've known for years, and he just wanted to talk. Actually introduced me to his wife and showed me the scene out of his window. I'm like, really sorry, John Smith, I have to go now.
I know who that was, I think.
Because you've always got to be polite to people. Like I say, we're also human, but yeah, absolutely. I think this plethora of online events has taught us to give ourselves permission to be stricter and protect our time, because we are all limited, and we're all certainly myself towards the back end of last year, just burning out with everything that's just there on screen, and it was non-stop. And actually things have changed, and I think they will remain changed. But going back to being kind with yourself and being strict with your time, I make a point of a weekend. I don't have push notifications on my work platforms. I am guilty at the minute. I've still got LinkedIn and Twitter on my personal phone as well as my work phone. But the second I take them off, then it's brilliant. I'm more present at home of a weekend. I'm spending more and better quality time with my kids and the dog. But it means when I'm back at work on Monday, I've got a whole load of other things to catch up on, the new connections potentially to make the most of, and I'm not jaded.
That's a really good point.
Following on that, another question is, would you consider walking away from a conversation if one person in the group is very dominant and you're not sure how to interrupt?
I think over the years I've learned how to butt in, basically. Yeah, you will quite often get that alpha figure who likes to have an audience. And what we both said about, you know, Abi and Nina both said 2 ears, 1 mouth. I said to be interested, you have to be interested. If you've got someone who is just not giving anybody else a second, for the sake of the other people, if you've got the confidence and the guts to do it, butt in and say, oh, what do you think? And this actually is the same in meetings. So as you're all going up your career ladders, make sure, whether it's in a meeting or in a networking situation, that you give everybody within that circle or around that table the chance to have their say. If there's one person dominating, he or she or they might actually be nervous and might just not be able to shut up because they're nervous. You never know. Or they might just be dominant so-and-so and just want to own the floor. But if you can make a point of bringing other people into the conversation and asking them what they think of what Chatterbox is saying, it gives them then confidence, even if it's just to say that they agree or disagree. You've brought them in and you've made it more of a conversation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I had a situation a few weeks ago where I was on a networking thing just for local people, and I made the mistake of saying, oh, actually we've got a bit more time than I thought. We probably only had 5 minutes, and then we did sort of like around the 6 people in our breakout session, And the first person, because I said, oh, we've got loads of time, took all 5 of those minutes to explain who he was. And it was really difficult in that platform to shut him up. That was really, really hard, because I thought I could just butt in, but I wasn't chairing our little session. So I thought, well, I can't do that either. But when we came back, so we went back into the normal meeting, and then we went back into our breakout group, all of us excluded that one person that taken up 5 minutes of our time. So it kind of naturally happens anyway. And I think because we've had to do such a lot of online stuff, and I think more and more people are getting more and more used to doing networking online, like we've said already, it sort of does become faster, and people are more used to people either stopping you from talking or stopping others from talking, or exiting the conversation. And I think we just have to be understanding of that, because everyone's got their own agenda, their own intentions of why they're there, what they want to achieve. So yeah.
Thank you. Next one is for Lucy. Did the networking dynamic change after you got your MBE?
I'd still get embarrassed when people ask me about my Blue Peter badge. Yes, it did to an extent, in that, right, so I'm going to be really honest, I'm going to be myself, I'm going to be really honest. When I got it, you actually know about it for quite a while before, but you're sworn to secrecy until it actually gets made public. And it took me a fair amount of time to have the confidence to put my MBE into my title on LinkedIn and on Twitter. But then, like, actually, there's 2 bits to this. Because I've got an MBE, I feel like I've really got to prove I'm worth it, and I've got to prove that I've re-earned it, and I feel I need to do more and more and more to prove that I've still earned it, if that makes sense. But then also, because we've done, honestly, in the 16 years I've been working in rail, the environment has changed. There is more diversity. And whilst we might generally moan about pale male and say it's not fair to put everybody of a certain ethnicity, age, or gender that they identify with in that bracket, because actually a massive part of my allies in industry are white, are men, and are a little bit older than me. It's not fair to tar everybody with the same brush, but then at the same time, the reason I put it on, and I've got my MSc on there as well, because I know, you know, the industry is awash with doctors and professors. What's an MSc to them? But actually, it's a really big deal to me. I come from an area where not that many of us went to university, never mind went on to get masters as well. So whilst it was really hard for me to put them on there, I kind of, it's almost like fluffing my feathers a little bit, showing that I can do it as well. So yes, networking did change for me, because people do still ask about it. So like I said, if I'm in an event and I'm like, do you mind if I just connect with you now on LinkedIn and I can send you my email address? Then I have to say, because I don't have it on my email signature at work, for example, I don't even have business cards anymore for work. So if you've not met me before, or you only know me through name, you don't necessarily know that I've got those letters as well. So they're like, oh, what did you get that for? And every single time I apologise, because I can't handle it still, and it's been a few years now. So if ever you do meet me, you're allowed to mock me.
Lucy, you should celebrate your MBE. I think it's a great achievement.
What I will say, so this is a shout out to the entire audience. Whilst it was for services to rail export niche, it was also for my work in supporting women in rail and the young rail professionals. So actually a massive thank you to everyone at the YRP who have ever thought that anything I've got to say is worth listening to or getting involved with, because absolutely it's so important that we help people at the early stage of their careers. It really, really is. So thank you, YRP, for changing my networking.
Thank you for agreeing to help out, because, you know, you could have said, no, I'm not interested. I'll just do my day-to-day job and not be interested in doing anything outside of work.
What we all need to do is thanks to my mum, because she's currently got the kids like, you know, in front of a film, in the gym jams. Don't go into the kitchen.
What would you say is like the biggest mistake people tend to do when they try to network with you? that you've seen over the years?
I think it's that person we talked about before, the person that just wants to talk at you and not listen.
Yeah, or is really, really loud and too enthusiastic. Because one of the, I'm not going to say who it was, but someone very senior in the rail industry, I was talking to someone and they knew the person I was talking to. So they just barged up and said hello and shook our hands. And we both just were stunned and we didn't know what to say because it took us by surprise. So that's not a good thing to do either. I think just be kind and be nice and be yourself. But yeah, mistake wise, don't get really drunk. That's always
yeah.
What would you say was your favorite networking event that you've done over the years? First one that pops in mind.
Gosh, there were so many. I just love networking.
Okay, you can say 3. We have time.
Okay. Maybe we should do, you do one and I do one, Lucy. If you want, I'll go first. So the first one I want to mention, and it was the environment, it's the buzz in the room. So if everyone's feeling really good and really happy, it was the first Women in Rail awards ceremony. I think it was the first one they'd ever done, and it was in the Shakespeare Globe Theatre in London. And so it was a beautiful venue, really unusual, really eclectic mix of people, really diverse mix of people. And the buzz in the room was fantastic. And I think that's the one where we've got our photograph, Lucy. Was that one, or was that something else?
Yeah.
It was just a fun night.
Yeah, it was a really fun night, and I had to take PP with me because I was having a photo shoot done for Rail magazine.
Oh yeah,
I'm in PPE at a black tie. So one of my favourites, it's not strictly speaking a networking event, but by golly do I network my socks off, it's Rail Live. I absolutely love Rail Live. Again, it's down to the atmosphere. You've got people who actively want to be there, people who are really interested and tuned in to what the event's about. The fact that you've got really seen it, you'll have Ian Prosser there from the ORR, you'll have Haynes and Hendy from Network Rail, you'll have all the Route MD, you'll have all the really seniors from the train building organisations, quite a fair few seniors from the talks, you've got all the government representatives, and you've got the people who do the day-to-day work, are coalface workers. And what I really love about Rail Live is because we're all in orange, I just find it's a leveler. So it can be as easy or as daunting to approach Sir Peter Hendy as it can be to get in touch with my mate Neil at Thermit, for example. We're all there to support and promote the industry. And yeah, it's I can't remember how many miles I did on day one. I actually put Strava on just to see how far I walked. It was literally miles and miles of networking. And bearing in mind we've been social distancing, and this is another tip as well, certainly as we're coming back out into more real life stuff, sussing out what people are comfortable with, because I'm a hugger by nature and a lot of people can't stand such close proximity. So kind of approach with a handshake, turn it to the elbow bump if you need to, and then if it's somebody you actually know, just go in and go for the hug. But the fact that you can see so many people, so many disciplines, so many levels of seniority, and it's such a down-to-earth event. I love Rail Live.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's great. It's Rail Live.
Yeah.
Are we running out of time, Lorena?
Yes, roughly, yes.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to ask us?
No, I think that was most of the questions. The rest were just thank you and agreeing, saying, what was that one? Oh, being your authentic self is the best advice. Someone else saying they consider networking as a job started but never finished because you can always learn and meet new people.
Yeah. And it really is. Like I said about paying it forward, actually, while I say you've got no direct and obvious benefit other than from that warm and fuzzy feeling and making a nice connection for somebody else, it always comes back to you. If you're recognised as that person who helps, then people are always really willing to help you. I am so lucky in that quite a lot of the times I approach someone for the first time myself, if I can't do it through a mutual introduction, because of the way in which I approach and the shared networks that we have, people are warmer to you already, and the way in which you approach that as well. Just be really mindful that people don't have much time and they don't want cold, hard, double-facing sales calls, for example.
Yeah, don't launch into a sales pitch. It's a disaster.
Thank you very much. And also thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We are planning hopefully a networking event at some point in the next few months, you know, COVID permitting and everything. So please watch this space.
And remember, pay it forward.
Yes, remember to pay it forward. Thank you very much, Abi and Lucy, for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Have
Thank
a
you
lovely
very
evening, everyone. Thank you, Lorena. Thank you, Dom, for looking after us in tech.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
How do you think that went?
And shall I call you in a second?